Welcome to Founders Field Notes, the podcast where you can learn from founders how to be founders. I'm Jason Klug, founder and CEO of Klug Group. This week we have a new friend of mine and an exciting guest, Josh Little, a multi-founder, a product builder, and just overall a great person to chat with. I actually got to know Josh recently on a entrepreneur trip up in Idaho. This guy, Travis Chambers, got a group of people together to go to a cabin of his and just have a good time. Josh and I got to drive around in one of Travis's cars, which is one of those Porsche GT3 RSs, and we just got to chat for like 2 hours while ripping around in a Porsche, and it was just such a great time getting to know him and chatting about business and chatting about hardships and how they were overcome. I just valued that time so much. So it was really good to then reconnect with him here and dig even deeper into his story and his entrepreneurial journey with the businesses he started and his current business. And even after this recording, we stayed in touch and talked about another business that he's looking to acquire and grow in the hydroponic industry, growing plants and supplies and so on and so forth. Josh is just a very impressive person, but I like his approach on things and his positive attitude. Even when things are not maybe the best situation for a business, he still keeps such a positive energy towards what he's doing, and it's just impressive and just great to be around. One thing that I learned in this conversation that I thought was neat is how he has this educational background, and a lot of it ties to what he's doing and is consistent. And you could tell that he's passionate about educating, and all of these platforms that he's worked on all have something to do with education, or it could be utilized in a way to where education is more interesting or more easier to digest or so on and so forth. And I like how that core value has continued to stay true with what he's worked on. So looking back at all the different companies he's been involved with, like Maestro, Bloomfire, Qzzr, which, I mean, I heard of Qzzr way before, I met him. So it's impressive that he's built such a brand that has had as many users as he's had. It's very difficult to do something like that. But he's also a brinemaster, which you'll hear more about with his pickles. And it would be interesting to see if he builds a massive pickle company one day. I wouldn't put it past him to do so. So listen in, watch whatever you're digesting this with. Josh Little, great entrepreneur, multi-founder, and very wise person. Thanks for listening. Your first lemonade stand or whatever. What was the first thing you did?
I am kind of a reluctant entrepreneur. I didn't know I was an entrepreneur until I was in my 20s. Mm-hmm. But when I was a kid, I had a lawn mowing business, and not your average lawn mowing business, but one that like a professional would want today. Okay. I just started mowing old ladies' lawns, like widows, and then the widows talked to other widows, and pretty soon I had like my mom would drive me around with my brother, and we
little push mower.
I had push mower. Then I had a tractor. Okay. Then we moved up to 2 weed whackers and a blower.
Cool.
So we had the whole setup, and of course I couldn't drive at 11. I started at 11. And then up until 16, that's what I did, is just mow a bunch of lawns all summer. And
I feel like that's a common one.
It is, yeah.
I didn't do that as a kid because I hated mowing the lawn. Mm-hmm. But I remember my brother and his friend did it, and I remember they were like had a stack of cash at one point. Yeah, where they did pretty well. But yeah, that's a common way of people getting a taste of it early on.
And it was just something that kids did, and I didn't realize that my mom was an entrepreneur. Where I grew up, there wasn't a term for that. Like she did odd jobs. She would wallpaper your house or paint your house or move a sandstone wall if you wanted to. She'd bring her 2 boys and we'd do that. But so she was an entrepreneur. We just didn't call her that. She just did odd jobs, right? And so I never grew up thinking, oh, this is a path for me. I could like build my own company or build my own business here. That's why I have a degree in education.
That. Yeah, okay. I love that. That's like you see the hustle, you see them having to do the sales, you see them having to then execute, you don't even think about it.
Yep.
That's great.
Didn't think about it.
So then you went to school for education, right? Weren't you like a high school teacher or something? Talk about that a little bit.
For one short year. Well,
one short year.
Where are you? Where I grew up in Michigan, in Jackson, which is a town very few people know. The options for me in front of me were either I could work for the power company, like my dad did. There's a big power company town. I could work at the prison, like a lot of other people's dads did, or you could be a teacher, or work in restaurants, like I was doing. Because when I was 16, I started working in restaurants and made way less than mowing lawns, but at least I wasn't mowing lawns anymore. So I chose teacher out of those options, and went to school to be a music teacher, music ed, and then ended up changing my major like 3.5 years in to secondary ed, because it was going to take 2 more years to get a music ed degree.
Really?
At the pace. We were working full time. I got married pretty young at 20.
I got you. Yeah.
And so we were both working full time. The max we could take is like 12 credit hours a semester, and not in the summers. So
I took my time in college and just never finished.
Yeah. That's what the cool kids do.
Sure, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so you get a degree in music education, you find a job, and you just did 1 year then, huh?
Yeah.
And did you know high school going into it? Did you were you thinking high school education?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a degree in secondary education, so that's like 6 through 12.
Oh.
And my degree was actually not in music ed, it was in geography and social studies. So I taught social studies, American history, and economics for a year. But I knew when I was doing student teaching, this wasn't going to be the thing. I just knew. But if you go that long and take out that many student loans to get a stinking degree, you ought to at least use it for a year.
Yeah.
So
test it out. Maybe you do like it.
And it wasn't for me. I didn't love it. I loved the art of teaching. I didn't love the economics of it. And, I had a son and was building a family, making $27,000 a year. I was like, I'm never going to be able to support a family on this. My raises are all lined out for the next 7 years, regardless of whether I suck or am amazing. And there's really no incentive to be amazing, because you're just in the system. You pay the union,
that's difficult.
You keep your job.
That's difficult to yeah. I wonder why educators complain so much.
Right. You have to love it. I mean, hats off to the teachers that are willing to do it. Like they're made of different cloth than I am.
Yeah, I've definitely had teachers that I look back to. The ones that inspire you and you always remember are the ones that most likely loved it.
Yep.
And then I look back to the ones that sucked, and I'm curious if they kept doing it or if they stuck around. You know what I mean?
Like I did, yeah.
Yeah, because there was plenty of teachers growing up that I remember that I look back to, and it's like that I enjoyed that class.
Yeah.
I don't know what grade I got in it, but I remember either the way they presented, the way they built their lesson plan, stuff like that. It's almost like that's how so that's probably the creative part you liked, is building the product of your lesson plan.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, creating an experience.
Man, right? That makes sense.
People love,
the flow of the year. That's a good point. So then what'd you do? You just quit?
Yeah,
you gave
quit.
up?
I worked at Office Depot.
At just a store?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because that was better than teaching for me at the time, being a receiving manager at Office Depot.
That makes sense. I mean,
so I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I don't know. This is early to mid 20s, and I was kind of lost after leaving the teaching world. Like, what could someone with this skill set even do for the world? And then I had some friends that got jobs as sales reps, and I was like, sales rep, what's that? I didn't even know there was a job called sales rep. There were people that you could travel around and sell someone a product and make good money, and they would even give you a corporate car sometimes. And I was like, well, that sounds awesome.
And the growth is exponential pretty much.
Right. You could make as much as you want. Yeah. So I started selling and realized I was pretty good at that. And it wasn't a field sales job at first. I worked at SBC, the phone company, and I sold DSL to people that didn't even know what DSL was, or in the very, very early days before only like anyone within 2 miles of, a central, what do they call them? Node or whatever it was, could actually get it.
So 2000.
Yeah, that's in the year 2000. In the year 2000.
Okay, yeah.
I sold DSL.
DSL. I'm trying to think of when I got DSL. It probably was like 2001 or 2 or something like that.
Yeah.
It had to have been.
But I did that for 6 months and I was good at it. And I realized it was good. There was an opportunity at Qzzr that opened up for a regional account rep. And then we did that. And then within like 6 months was promoted to national account rep and then started doing sales training there. And of course, that was a natural fit because it was like, the degree in education plus, the sales and doing well in sales.
That's a good.
And then I repeated that same cycle at Stryker. I came in to sell. I doubled quota the first year. They brought me in-house to be a sales trainer. Then I spent the next couple of years building out a global training program. And that's what eventually led me to my first business.
So I interviewed Bennett from Dirty Dough.
Oh, yeah.
Last week. And, he's an incredible salesman, a lot of background like that in sales, right? And it was interesting. And I wonder if it's similar for you. He would get all these sales jobs and bounce around. But the reason why it was super valuable for him is because he was getting all the different sales training techniques. Like Cutco, and then he learned this technique, and then he moved to, Vivint, and then he got this different line of sales training and stuff. So it almost seems like when you got the AT&T gig, was there training that built a foundation for your sales process that was valuable that you kept with you and continued to build on that?
Not
or was it more natural? You kind of figured it out as you went?
Honestly, the places I were hired in, Qzzr and Stryker, they didn't have training. So
really?
I was the person that developed it.
That's sweet.
In fact, at Stryker, I may get sued for saying this someday. I don't know, but I was selling computer-assisted brain surgery platforms, to like surgical navigation. And like 9 a.m. the first day I was supposed to start, I like called in to the technical director that I knew at Stryker, and I was like, "Hey, should I be like going somewhere, or should I be like going to a training or some onboarding or something?" He's like, "Oh yeah, come into the office and I'll show you." And so that day I went in and he showed me how to like unplug the computer and how to reboot it and how to, undock a laptop from the, and then they gave me a cell phone and a laptop and said, "Go."
Wow.
And I'm like, "Go?" And they're like, "Go follow some other reps around." And what?
That's
like,
interesting.
There's no training for, I don't even know the lobes of the brain. Like, okay, so I went and got a stack of medical anatomy books and went off and started following people and, other reps in different cities. And
so you're almost like an entrepreneur there in a way.
Yeah, it was very
entrepreneurial salesman.
Yeah, they call it sink or swim.
Salesperson.
But I like that. I call it throw to the wolves. Yeah.
I mean, that was like the first day I showed up. My job was Scott, and I show up, no one's there. Not even the boss. I sit down at the desk and I'm sitting there waiting. They didn't even have a computer for me. And I'm like, what do I do? And then at like 10 o'clock, they roll in and they finally were like, "Oh, I think we got an extra computer over here." And they set up the computer. They get my accounts all set up. And then basically the phone would just ring and I would just have to pick it up and just start BSing,
just making up whatever.
But it's like, sometimes you have to, when you build it on the way down, right? Like build the plane on the way down, you kind of figure out your own way of doing things, and you could probably, like, a lot of times you could excel at it better, I feel like, versus if someone teaches you like, this is how you do it, blah, 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 but that might not work for everybody. Versus if you kind of have to build it and figure it out and you stick to the end goal that's consistent, and then you can figure out a better process for you specifically.
Yeah.
You know, that's cool. Okay.
But largely inefficient. So
yeah, I feel like a natural chain of events too, going, once sales getting into the medical space, just because the dollar is a good amount, right? Like you sell more and you make more. And yeah, that makes sense.
Uncapped commissions.
Pfizer selling
the dream.
Were you selling Viagra then at the time? Is that
no.
They make a lot of stuff, but
they make a ton of stuff. Yeah. I started in their RX business, then went to consumer healthcare, like Dramamine, Doxadan, Surfac.
Okay. You watch that movie Love and Other Drugs?
No.
That's a good one. It's got Jake Gyllenhaal, and who else is it?
Oh, really?
Anne Hathaway. You know what I'm talking about?
Is it about pharma?
Yeah. It's about a drug sales rep. And I remember like he's a hustler, and like the flow of this sales process for a drug rep is always interesting. Like working the person at the front desk with flowers and stuff, and then eventually building the relationship to getting through to the doctors and stuff. Yeah. And it was I thought it was a good movie. And then him dealing with his girlfriend or whatever who has health issues, and then something with that tied to how his morale or like his morals with selling the drugs and stuff like that, something like that. But I thought it was a good movie. You should check that out.
Okay.
So then you
noted.
And so very common. A lot of the entrepreneurs that I've heard had at some point had a sales gig, because I feel like to be an entrepreneur, you have to be able to sell, whether it's yourself, like for me, it was being able to sell myself to be a consultant or a developer or an engineer or whatever. Or if you're building a product, you have to be able to sell your product.
Yep.
Or partner with someone that can sell your product. Yep. If you're the behind the scenes, like Jobs and Wozniak, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, 2003, 2007, you're selling Stryker stuff. Did you go right into Maestro from that?
At Stryker, I was in sales and then went into sales training, and I was trying to build a global training program for that division. And I tried to build, at the time, this is 2005, 2006, an e-learning program. But this is like before any of the tools that are out there today existed. This is, and in order to do it, you had to hire like videographer, hire a 3D animator, hire a content person, hire and buy an LMS and like put it all together. And it was like a circus to try to build an e-learning program around the binders and the CDs that we had currently. And I just thought, man, there should just be a company that does this. Like this is almost a full-time job to just keep this thing going and check in and project manage this. And so I looked around to try to find a company that I felt confident could create medical e-learning, and I couldn't find it. And I thought,
like a software development company or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, there were some companies that were building e-learning modules, but they weren't like for the medical space, and the people didn't know anatomy and those things that you really need to know to build a great experience. So I decided that I was going to start one, and that's what Maestro was. This is just the company that I wish existed. And Maestro essentially is an interactive agency. We could build websites, we could build apps, we could build software, we could build e-learning courses as well. So as an interactive agency fully focused on e-learning and helping people in the corporate world learn how to perform beautifully and onboard well and be trained up. Solving the problem that I wish was solved for me along the way.
But you didn't have a software development background.
No.
So, but I know now you love building product, right? That's like a big part of what you currently love doing. So you get a taste of it building product with Maestro.
Yeah.
But how did you find a partner to co-found this with? Did you what
So
did you do?
Eventually. So like, I tried to start Maestro as a side hustle while I was working at Stryker, but there's really, if you're at Stryker, there's no other lever. Like you can't find any time to put in anything. So I could find like 2 hours a week, and it just wasn't enough to like get something off the ground other than, think about it a little bit more. So I decided I needed to like leave my corporate job if I was going to try my hand at an entrepreneur. And along the way, probably worth, adding this context, I had discovered that I was an entrepreneur. And for me, that was the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yep.
Which I know a lot of people have read and loved. Some people, I've recommended to are like, yeah, I know all that stuff. I'm like, you grew up in a different place than I did, because this book is like a revelation to me. Like you can own your own business if you want to. You can like be wealthy if you choose to. And there's a path to that. How would you even do that? So those ideas just took root in me. And it took like 5 years for me to get up the confidence to actually step out and to build my first company. And then during those 5 years at the Pfizer and Stryker days, I was the guy that if we went to lunch, there's no way we're talking about anything other than the businesses we could build together and the ideas that I have. And I'm going to throw down things on the table. And when I was on a plane, I would fill up notebooks of just different ideas and a logo and a design for this. And what if a light switch could do that? And what if a this or whatever? But none of them felt doable or tangible until the idea for Maestro. Like, e-learning for medical device companies. I could do that. I could probably figure out how to do that.
And medical has got that cheese,
and they got
so
the
they'll
money,
throw down at
right? Yeah,
so that's a good,
they got the money to throw on it and not the time, which is the problem I had. I quit my job at Stryker the same week that I moved into my dream house on the lake with a nightmare mortgage. And
but you've been saving in the medical space, making good enough money where you got a nest egg at least built up.
Like I said, I was trying to start Maestro on the side. The whole time I was trying to do that, I was like, man, if I just had a week, if I could just take a week and work on Maestro, dude, I could crush. And so I did it. And my wife is, she believes me enough to like say, yeah, you can do that. That's not a crazy idea. So I quit. And then that first week, I just downloaded some free software, built some spine anatomy training modules.
That's cool.
Flew down to Abbott Spine in Texas and visit with a couple other manufacturers. Did my first $90K deal for 9 modules for Abbott Spine, and then had to come home and figure out how the heck to build the rest of it. You know,
that's why the agency model worked for me too, right? Because you could basically, if you can get the first few deals going where you have paying projects, then you're good.
Yeah.
You know, versus like obviously building consumer products. That's why I didn't start by making a brand first. I started with the agency knowing that like I can't pay for tooling. I can't pay to do this and, you know, blah, blah, blah. Versus like I figured out how to put a website up by myself, you know, with like a help from a few friends, you know, on like getting the coding and stuff figured out at least a little bit, like on WordPress and whatnot. And then all I needed to do is just get deals.
Yeah.
You know, so that makes total sense.
Yeah. Anytime I speak at a college, that's one of the big points I'll make is like, if you have an idea for a product or a company, that's great. Don't build it. Build a service company around that idea in that space, solve that problem, get paid, get revenue, learn, make a lot of mistakes, then in a couple of years, build the product.
Yeah, because then the other thing I think is valuable with that is you get to see all of the clients executing everything and you 100%. Learn from your clients, and they're the ones that are like in the trenches doing the other parts of the business.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was valuable because when I started Dry even, I had already built like 100-something projects and worked with tons of brands and stuff and seen successes and failures and stuff like that. So incredibly valuable to start that way.
You learn and other people pay you thousands of dollars or millions of dollars to do that, right? Along the way. And it's worthwhile.
So now with this, you get your first 90K deal. What do? You start building a team with that? You start bringing in contractors?
I really didn't need to, but I did because, you know, I wanted to make something scalable. I wanted, you know, I need to go get the next deal. So I need somebody who can build these. So I made all kinds of mistakes, like trying to hire somebody that could write content and find out, you know, try to turn a teacher into some e-learning developer and whatnot. And I realized, you know, at the end of the day, designers are amazing at what they do. Developers are amazing at what they do. Just hire the professionals. That's where we ended up, is just having, you know, a team of designers and engineers that could build all the things that we needed. Add like, you know, instructional designer and a couple project managers, and that's a company. And we can throw as many projects and scale up each of those teams as we need.
And you could kind of grow and contract as needed too.
So I did. I added a co-founder because I realized that while I could sell, I was actually better at the content and the product, like producing these things. And that was a really hard thing to hand off. And so I had a couple of co-founders that I brought in like after the founding date, since, you know, today, Jen, my co-founder, she owns the company, right?
Cool.
And she was sales. And so I was like, well, if I can't, because I kept running back between like making the donuts and selling the donuts, right? And I could pick one or the other, and it was easier to bring someone in to just go sell and do more deals than it was take this mess of e-learning development shop and figure out how to produce all these things for dozens of companies.
But it grew pretty big, right? Like how big did you get it?
It was like 5 million when I started my second company.
Okay. So 2017 it was acquired by Jen then?
By Jen, yeah.
Okay. So like, an internal sale.
Mm-hmm.
And did you do that because you were starting Bloomfire then? Is that what was going on, or what was that?
No. So the deal was, and this is kind of what you were saying, is like you learn on, on behalf of your clients, you're learning all these things. So with Maestro, what we learned was we were only solving 10% of the problem, the problem of what you need to know to do your job. How does someone learn these things? Well, only 10% do you actually learn from quotes training. Even an amazing training program is only going to give you a small percentage of like what you really need to know to be successful in your job. How do you learn the rest? Well, it's that email that this guy sent, or the video that she created, or that presentation that so-and-so gave. And where is that? How do you even access this? How do you give it to someone new? There's no way to do that. So largely the collective brain of your organization is untapped. And so I got the idea to tap that brain with a product called Bloomfire. And I called it a social learning platform. And essentially Bloomfire was just an easy way to share knowledge with your coworkers. You could record a video with your webcam. You could record your screen, show what you're doing. And then there was kind of a Q&A engine inside, and it was all searchable. So it was like Facebook plus YouTube had a baby closed social for your company. That's what Bloomfire was. We started building that in 2009. That was like year after Twitter launched.
So you were working on, okay, so you had Bloomfire going during Maestro for quite a bit of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so our deal was with Jen and I, because Maestro was the economic engine, it was like, hey, you run Maestro. I'll go build Bloomfire, and we'll copy and paste cap tables. So you'll get a percentage of Bloomfire, and I'll get a percentage, and basically our ownership structure of Maestro and Bloomfire. So if you can keep the funding going for Bloomfire
and resource management, all that stuff,
then you'll get, a percentage of the company that I went over here and built. Yep. And so that's what we did.
Yeah. That's how I did Dry.
Yeah.
Development resource, all that stuff is the only things that I needed, is to fill the gaps that Klugonics and these companies didn't have, which is like the branding and stuff like that. But my wife did all that stuff. So, but that makes total sense.
There's a lot of inefficiencies when companies can kind of share things like that.
And I watched Scott do that. I think that's what inspired me, is Scott did that at Armor Active with Vodo, app he built. He did it with, and then Instafluence and stuff like that. So, I guess that's good for the serial entrepreneur in us, right?
That's right.
Versus like the solo focused entrepreneur.
Now that wasn't my intention. That wasn't a deliberate strategy. That's just what kind of fell out of the opportunity.
Yeah.
But that's why I think it's good to start with a service company.
Right.
It just opens up all kinds of opportunities.
Yeah, and stabilizes cash flow. You get your salary and stuff like that figured out, so you're not like struggling to pay bills and whatnot. Like it's a smart model.
Yep.
Yeah. And you could also, like I was saying, when you're working with a bunch of clients and, stuff like that, you get so much like user data and input and stuff like that you get to apply to what you're building. And that also makes the product better, I feel like.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's great. And that, it looks like you had a little double acquisition, right? 2011, that's 2 years after you started it?
Yeah.
So what was that? Was that like a PE deal or what?
No. One of our customers actually, Life Size Communications, the CEO of Life Size, Craig Malloy, they were using Bloomfire and they were like, this is the future of enterprise.
That's cool.
Let's acquire Bloomfire and take it to the future.
Wow.
And so Bloomfire still exists today. It's one of the premier knowledge management platforms. That's what Gartner and Forrester call the category now. But
that's incredible.
I once upon a time called it social learning. So
that's cool. But, that's a good legacy to leave behind there.
Yeah, really proud of that product. And
Maestro. That's two companies right off the bat that are around how many years later? Like almost 20-some years later. That's crazy. Cool.
Yeah. It was 5 years to, from quitting my corporate job to multimillionaire.
It's taken me 10. I still haven't had my exit yet. But
no, you will. You will, and it'll be much bigger than my first exit. So,
but that's okay. So that's a good taste of entrepreneurship. So you get this little exit, and you had two, right? But really, the 2011 one, did that give you the opportunity to start your next company? Because Qzzr is the big one that I heard of.
You heard of that.
early on, right? So So is this, you figured out how to build with Bloomfire, you get the exit, you get some excess capital. Did you start then investing in building Qzzr or what?
Not immediately. I took a year off. I actually thought I was going to be an angel investor, and I looked at like 40 deals and did 0.
Yeah.
And I was like, well,
idea.
I guess I'm not an investor if I can't like believe in someone else.
Yeah.
So I got bored. If you've ever gone through this, if you try to do an early retirement or something, you'll create this big list of all these things you want to do. And then you start working that list, and like 3 months later, all that's left on the list is to like adjust your sprinklers again. And there's just not a lot of fulfillment in that. And so, I decided to build another company. And this time we actually, because I'd built a service company, because I've built a product company, I was like, what if I built a company that built companies? What if I created a venture studio? And this was kind of a hot idea at the time. Science Inc. with Dollar Shave Club in Los Angeles. And who's the one out east? Chartly and Bitly and Chartbeat they created. And so I was like, let's do that in Utah. Let's create a venture studio in Utah. So we launched Movement Ventures. And I hired a team that was kind of going to be the team to just build the products, and then we'll hire the right GM or CEO to like take these products and spin them out. We started building things and killing things, and we killed like 6 ideas on the way to Qzzr. And Qzzr was a quiz tool. It was like the original doc was like, let's build the world's simplest quiz tool. 5 features. Teachers will love it. Trainers will love it. They'll eat it up. It's so simple. Make a quiz, embed it on your website. That's it. And then you can track results. And I knew this space. I knew like the e-learning space. I was like, this is easy. And so when we launched it, it was kind of like blank stares. People were not quite sure why they would use this versus their LMS, or what level of Kirkpatrick's valuation system does this fulfill, or, they were a little too heady about it. And I was like, no, it's just a really simple quiz tool. But publishers and marketers got a hold of it. KSL actually here locally was one of the first publishers to like make a quiz with Qzzr. And KSL called me. They launched a quiz. I don't remember their first quiz. But they called me the next day and they're like, dude, do you know what you have? Like that was the biggest article of the year on KSL. And it was like some national parks quiz or something. Like, what national park are you going to visit this summer or something?
Just because how interactive it was.
Because it was interactive and it got shared. And right around the time we built Qzzr, and this is a huge, huge component of entrepreneurship. You're better to be lucky than good. We just happened to be lucky that the Facebook algorithm was pushing BuzzFeed-like content.
Oh, yeah.
BuzzFeed was making all these cool quizzes. All the other publishers in the world saw that, and they were like, well, we could hire an engineering team to build some interactive tools, or we could just use Qzzr.
Yeah.
And that's where it started taking off. Publishers watch other publishers, and it just started to grow. And within a year of like the first publisher, we had hundreds of millions of monthly actives.
That's crazy.
On the platform.
Well, and I feel like it's a good clickbait.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like, see where you're at in this or whatever, like.
Yeah, it's an unanswerable question.
Yeah.
Who am I? Everyone wants to know. You can never know enough about who you are, and quizzes start to scratch that itch for you.
Ton of data, random data, right? Like, what do you do
so
with all
data.
that?
Yeah, and the thing about it too is unlike survey data, which is very biased because people lie on surveys. They don't have a vested interest in telling the truth, really. But on quizzes, there's a vested interest in the outcome. If I lie to this quiz, I might as well just stop taking it because I want to know which Harry Potter character I am. And if I don't tell you what my favorite soda is, there's no way I'm going to know whether I'm Hermione or Ron,
That's funny. Yeah.
or whatever it is. So people tend to tell the truth with quizzes. And there's a 70% take rate versus like a 1% take rate with a survey. So yeah, we really found something cool.
And was this, any of these companies like Maestro, you didn't really have to raise money, right? Because it's a service, right?
Yep.
Bloomfire, you basically built, on Maestro.
Yep.
But I'm guessing when you did the 2011 deal, you got some money in the bank for it to help grow it and whatnot. Then you sell it again. How did you do Qzzr? That was self-funded then from the Bloomfire or what?
Yep. I put in $500,000, like the first $500,000 just to get the venture studio going.
So all these are pretty bootstrapped.
Yeah. Then we raised, with Qzzr, we raised a seed from some local investors, and then we went to raise our Series A in 2015. So yeah, we raised
getting
venture
that
for
many
that.
users, it's like...
I've never seen anything grow like that.
That's
crazy. It was just crazy growth, up and to the right. Every chart was just like parabolic curve up and to the right. It was awesome.
That was so Kirk. I interviewed him. Have you met Kirk?
Kirk Wiemet?
Yeah. So it was cool to hear him talk, because he went in with like Scan and stuff, and that company was like all funded, right? And the stuff that he learned from classes at BYU as entrepreneurial classes and stuff like that, about like when you get those curves and stuff like that, it's time to fundraise, no matter what, right?
Hockey stick.
Yeah. So that's, I haven't fundraised yet. I guess I did that tiny little round from family and friends. I haven't gotten there yet. But the more and more I have these conversations and I hear about the trajectory it does to the companies and stuff like that, but also I can hear it could be like nightmare too at the same time. So it's like, but Qzzr makes sense, right?
It does.
And then for him, it was like even his, Scan's one thing, so many downloads, but then he was telling me about the stuff that he built on the side in like college and stuff for like video game and server checking and stuff like that, or port scanning and whatnot, and then getting, million monthly users all of a sudden, and he's running ads and stuff, and he doesn't need to raise money because it's just him and a website and it makes money for him, Yep. It's just such a...
Kirk's a genius.
Yeah, that was a great story. Good episode. Check it out. So Qzzr's crushing it, and then in 2022, you exited. That's last year.
It was last year.
Yeah.
Right.
So you had two good events last year.
Yeah, second acquisition of Bloomfire.
Yeah, and you probably had a little bit left over from that. You held out into some of the shares.
Yeah, but then they did a 450-1 reverse stock split. So it was a very small little, almost a joke.
Oh.
This is the lesson, kids.
Yeah.
Once you leave your company, it's not yours.
Yeah.
And suddenly you look like a villain and they look like heroes. And
I get that. Yeah.
Yep.
That's always tough. I've been on the other side of that right now, but decisions have to be made. Business is business, So then these happened while Volley was already in motion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Neither were like a big exit, so I don't want to, because
you've had at least a few cool cars and stuff, right?
Yeah.
GTRs
we had
and
a lot
stuff.
of good cars.
That's good.
Motorhomes and some awesome trips.
Yeah. So what inspired then your now company Volley from all of this,
Yeah. So after Qzzr, I took what I thought was the summer off, which ended up being a year, which ended up being 2 years off.
That's good.
And then I, felt the call to like get back and build something again, and felt the energy to do that. And I started working on different ideas that I had. I have this big spreadsheet, a big rubric to try to like grade which ideas are best and why. So I just like keeping different ideas and problems people had to solve. So I worked on actually 12 ideas over 2 years before I got to Volley. I worked on a pickle company, an RV park roll-up, a debt fund.
Brinemaster.
Yes.
Yeah, that's on the list too.
That's on the list too, yeah. I make pickles, so I thought, this is time to build a pickle company. But none of them were right. And, I passed on all of them based upon what I was looking for at the time. And then the pandemic hit, and I just knew it's going to change how we communicate. It's going to change a lot about the world, and this is an opportunity. You don't get opportunities like this as an entrepreneur. Like what is going to change permanently about the world? Communication. What does the world need? A flexible way to communicate face to face. Like Marco Polo, that's cute. Snap, yeah, that's awesome, but that's only for young people, in this certain category. What about Marco Polo for work? What about, work, school, church, community, all of these other things, places that you could use like a video messaging product. So that's where inspired by some conversations I was having with Scott and others on Marco Polo. And I was like, these conversations are better than any synchronous call I have, any synchronous time I have with Scott, because we're talking every day, multiple times a day, about the most important things in our life. And it's all on our own time. It's async, so we don't have to schedule anything. We don't have to get together. We can just like share a thought when we have it or ask a question when we have it. And so I was like, this would be killer for teams. This would just be amazing for teams. The pandemic hit, everyone's starting to work remote. Let's build Volley. And so that's the idea of Volley, is like, what if Slack and Marco Polo had a baby? Wouldn't that be amazing? And that's where we started building, within a month after the pandemic.
Yeah, I feel like it's more digestible. It's more, especially like for people like myself that are easily distracted.
Yep.
Getting an email with a long idea versus like a back and forth continued conversation where there's, it's a great way to keep like a conversation going and stay in touch. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Versus like even text messages and stuff. It's just, you can't read the other side, the emotion. You can't, you misinterpret a lot with like a text message. Emojis don't do enough. So that's what I thought was always super valuable about it. And I remember when it started coming up, and Scott basically forces everybody on it. I won't talk to you unless you send me a Volley.
Yeah, good.
Scott,
He's a great evangelist.
Talk to Scott or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And I could see why, because it works for that fast-paced mindset too.
Yep.
You can hit 2x speed and blast through stuff, you know? Yeah. So then going into that, what was that? Like, what was the plan there? Was it self-funded? You also raised some money, right?
We did. Yeah. I raised earlier with Volley, just knowing what we were building.
Yeah. And the timing.
This is not let's just bootstrap this thing sort of plan. The timing, we need to go fast, and we need to go big, because, there's going to be a team collaboration tool. People are going to be living on this thing all day. We need to build it natively on each platform. We need engineers to do that. And so there was no other way than I still put in the first capital, but we raised within like 6 months our seed round. And we ended up raising like 6.3 so far, seed round, to just go after it.
Yeah. I mean, the quality of the product is there, right?
Thank you.
It's like, I always thought it's like very sophisticated. It's not buggy. The user experience and the flow of it was always so nice. So yeah, it's hard to do that without proper funding.
It is. Yep.
Like even the one you guys recently launched which I use to like sell time on doing quick consultations and whatnot. Like the way that spun up was really quick. Just going through that experience and having like my desktop version and then having it on my phone as well is nice. So I can like do it on the go. But I feel like if someone's paying for my time, I like using it on my computer, because I have like, one, I got the app open, I could do research, I can gather my thoughts and write things down of what I'm going to respond with, and then go back and actually give a well-formulated response, which I think that's just, it's a unique way to do that and add value to people that need it.
Yeah, especially for someone like me who's a slow thinker. Like even podcasts make me nervous a little bit, because I'll inevitably get the out of the blue, what are top 3 things you learned from... I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. Give me 30 minutes and let me a notepad, and maybe I could come with a thoughtful answer.
Yeah.
So async is just great for someone like me that just needs a second to think before I respond. I just, to even do just 10 seconds or a minute of research is just like, oh, here's a much better response. So
or you need a day.
Yeah. Well, we like to think we're creating a better conversation, a fundamentally better conversation because of that. There's still awesome reasons to meet synchronously, like a podcast or something like this, or building relationships. But for everything else, there's Volley.
Yeah.
And that's what we're building it for.
Yeah. What have you learned throughout the evolution of Volley? Because I feel like it's tweaked and changed a lot, and you've made a lot of pivots with it. Yeah. So like talk me through the the story of how Volley has came to be what it is today, because the first version is very simple, makes sense, but some of these features that you've tacked on and you're kind of finding ways to monetize it, right, in different ways. Like how has that chain of events kind of happened?
We were wrong about our go-to-market hypothesis, which is remote teams want to communicate using async video. They do, but very rarely. They don't want this to be an everyday sort of thing, and it's not everyone on the team. So this idea of Marco Polo for work or whatever, right? On paper, it seems to be right. Like remote teams, what are the top 3 problems? Lack of communication, loneliness, meeting fatigue. Volley aces that test. Solves all of those problems for you. But the unique stack of conditions that you need to have in order to adopt Volley, everyone on the team has to be on it. Everyone has to be comfortable recording video to take turns in a conversation. Otherwise, why are you on it? Just go use Slack. Everyone has to be willing to use it as their daily driver. So if you have Slack and then Volley as a sidecar, it's just like a hobby car.
It's another app.
GT3 that's going to sit in your garage and you kind of wonder why you have it and it's kind of expensive and whatever. The reproducibility was just so low for teams. And when you look at like Marco Polo, for example, where is that used? Well, largely families.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of moms who use Marco Polo and stay in touch with their friends. And if you think about those environments, those are high trust, low risk environments. Now think about a work environment. That's the opposite. It's high risk, low trust, typically, in most teams, unfortunately. And so we just saw over and over, thousands of teams adopted Volley, but hundreds stuck. And we were like, those numbers are not good. And over the first year, as we were developing the platform, it was always like, well, they can't use it if they don't have a Slack integration. Okay, let's build the Slack integration. Oh, they can't use it if they don't have channels. Okay, let's build channels. Okay, So we threw features at it for about a year, but then we saw that our top users were not teams. They were coaches and creators and consultants, and they were using Volley for their coaching, and they're using Volley for their mastermind or the group program, their fitness challenge or whatever. And they were our top spaces and our top users. And we were like, what the crap is a mastermind? And how are you using Volley to do this? And let's see if we can figure out, how to support you. And so we started focusing on those users last year, at the beginning of last year. And that's really what led us by the end of the year to realize that there's an opportunity to allow people to monetize experiences that they're creating on Volley. They're creating learning experiences, educational experiences, coaching experiences, mentoring, therapy that's happening on Volley. And wouldn't it be amazing if like sales, billing, fulfillment was all integrated in one easy circle, all on one platform? And so that's what we launched in the fall. That's why that feature does feel a little bit off if you're like, Volley's a team communication app. Oh, but you can charge people. Well, what?
Yeah,
why?
We got to monetize it somehow.
But
right?
That's the evolution. And we had to monetize. Like we were running the messaging app playbook, the same one Telegram and Discord ran. You raise your Series A on engagement and retention metrics, not monetization. That was our plan until we got punched in the face by the tech bubble bursting and just the whole economy changing starting last summer. And so we really knew like there's no way we're going to see our next round unless we monetize. So we had to monetize. It was a little bit hasty, but we had to monetize in order to get to the position we are to be able to even raise the next round. Yeah.
So then let's see. Towards the end of 2020, I was introduced to Volley while I was doing an online mastermind with Dale.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And Scott, and who else is in that? I can't remember who else. Good group, but that Scott got everybody on a Volley group, and that was. But I don't think Dale used it as a class. I think Dale joined it because Scott wanted everybody in the mastermind to do it. But I think over time, then Dale figured out how to use it because he saw that people were very interactive outside of the actual mastermind meetups. And it was a regular interaction that people were throwing things in at, sparking new conversations and stuff like that. So I feel like that was probably, must have been like early on in the development of mastermind use.
It was, Dale was one of the early ones that were building a pretty engaged big group on Volley, hundreds of people. And we started to see how a conversation with hundreds of people could feel equitable and not too crazy. Like if hundreds of people jump on a Zoom call, good luck. Who's speaking first? What questions? Like it's really one to many. But Volley is truly in a group of hundreds. It can be many to many because everyone has an equal opportunity to hit the record button, and then you can thread in under individual Volley, so you can have like these side conversations within this main conversation. And so that was the start of our realization. Like, oh, maybe this thing's for community. Maybe this thing's more for creators or groups, or I don't know. But we need to explore.
So this is 21 then that you're really starting to move in the mastermind side?
22. Yeah, last year.
Yeah. Then what was next? Like what was the pivot from there? Because
we're still there, baby.
But I feel like the consulting one was not really like, it was like a different play too, right?
Well, it was just seeing those people, seeing creators, coaches, and consultants. They're building experiences on Volley. Like they would have their course, their content on Thinkific or Kajabi or whatever, but the discussion was on Volley.
Right.
And they kept saying, we want more of this. Like the discussion is really what makes the course. Like that's just content. This conversation is really powerful. So we saw more and more people creating those experiences, folks like Dale and et cetera, that were creating experiences that people would be willing to pay for. And then they were hacking, a website with a Stripe integration and, an email client to try to create like the sales and billing flow. And then they would give a link to Volley, and we're like, we could just build that. We could just make that super easy for you. You could like come in, create your offers. We'll give you, here's your landing page, share your link with the world. And
that's when I set that up. And that was, I've had a few here and there.
That's when we got Klug.
Yeah.
Committed.
But the cool thing too, I thought it's almost like a cameo play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where like you can get like a big name, time with a big name. Versus like scheduling a 30-minute meeting with a big name is way more difficult than like doing a 10-minute Volley chat.
Yeah.
Where like you said, they can respond on their own time. They're not committing to a 30-minute meeting, which is way harder to do versus like 10 minutes over a 2-week period, you know? So, I feel like it's much more useful for people that do consultations and stuff like that than you might think. Because what I've realized is a lot of times those conversations end up either they become a client because, the takeaways is, well, we could do all that for you. Why don't I connect you with my sales team and you start talking about the next steps and how we can make that happen more successfully,
a lot of your potential customers just need a good reason to get to know, love, and trust you. And this is a way that people can pay you to become a lead, not the other way around. And all they need really is like 5 minutes. They just need to know, do you understand their problem? Can you solve their problem? And there's no way to really know that on a website until you have that first conversation. And this is just a great way to have a low risk first conversation.
Yeah. So what do you think is next for Volley? Where do you see it going over the next bit?
Yeah. I mean, I really see, we set out to build the future of messaging. That was our intention. But what we unlocked is personalized education at scale. And that's something the world needs is a way to personalize learning. There's all kinds of course platforms out there. I've built some of them that give you the content, but it's really the conversation that enables someone to learn and grow. And so I'm really proud of that. So we'll probably be building in a lot of the content pieces that you see in learning platforms and, take Volley to what it can be. You create any experience, any sort of learning, coaching, mentoring experience on Volley, charge for it. It's super easy.
It's neat how your career has always came back to the fact that you enjoy educating. It's pretty cool.
I can't get away from it.
It's a pretty good thing to be passionate about.
It is.
That and building. I mean, those two things are, good addictive qualities to have, right? Or things that you're addicted to, right?
Yeah.
So that's That's good.
Yep.
Well, that being said, what are some of these things that you look back at as those main takeaways that you continuously have told many entrepreneurs to stay wary of, or do or not do? What are some of those points that you would say is like your field note?
Yeah,
that you leave behind?
Yeah. So I would say some of those are just in terms of leadership. It's just like do what you say or say something else.
Mm-hmm.
It's just amazing how hard it is for people to do that, especially today.
Mm-hmm.
And really what that does is garner trust. It's integrity basically, but I try so hard to do what I say. If I told you I'm going to be here at 1 for the podcast, I'm going to be here at 1 for the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
Whether I have to move a mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just about punctuality. It's just, and I've gone so far to say that words are promises.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you've spoke it, it's a promise. It's true. And I will make it true. So I think that one has paid dividends for me, which is, I don't know. It's not like I'm going to start a business on that idea. But
it's something to keep in mind as you're starting the business and you're working with people and finding co-founders and partners and stuff like that. It's like very important. Or in your team and your employees and everybody that works with you. It's like, that sticks out. Yeah.
Another one is I play with all cards on the table. Most people don't. Most people have their hand tight to their chest and don't share information openly. I've found, at least for me, I've been able to use that as a superpower. Just my information is your information. And I actually find people are more devoted and more loyal when they know that you're above board with everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. And so I do, with my last few companies, I've done weekly updates on everything. Like, here's all the data, here's our financials, here's where we're at, here's where we're going, here's what our runways look like, here's what I like, here's what I don't like. And so when you play in that way, again, you gain the trust of the people that are around you, and they, they'll stick with you even in the hard times because they know that, there's probably a good time around the corner.
Also, I feel like it helps if they know where things are at, and it'll change their workflow and how they attack problems because they do know how things are deep, like the reality of a situation.
Yeah.
Whereas if they think, everything's cushy and good, they're probably going to react and go about something differently.
Right.
Yeah.
So and if you want a problem solved, bring an engineer into that problem. It'll get solved because they won't be able to stop thinking about it. And so, I've brought engineers into a lot of sticky business problems, right? And then suddenly things start working, or things get figured out, or we found a different way to build what we were thinking we could build, or we could actually do the thing that we said we couldn't last week because now we can see the problem fully.
That's great.
So those are just like ways to be, though. I don't know if those are like business wisdom. Those are just ways to be an entrepreneur, ways to lead.
They're mindsets, right?
Yeah, mindsets,
I think they're good things that, is especially when you start building a team and you problems do come up. How do you present them, handle them, discuss them, all that stuff? Because I've seen some of the businesses and business owners that I've worked with that have the hardest times are usually the ones that like are afraid to discuss stuff or be vulnerable and talk about challenges, or they're too prideful to discuss them. And when shit hits the fan, I'm not afraid to talk about it. And I feel like that's gotten me through stuff quicker because I'm talking about it, and then you're getting input that you wouldn't get otherwise if they thought everything was okay.
Yeah.
So I think
you're building family, not coworkers, right?
Yeah. Even like inside, outside, like even like with mentors, like with Scott and stuff, it's like, I just lay it out, and you get way more value out of those conversations if you do lay it out versus not.
It's the only way you can get better, right?
Yeah.
So, and I would say, I don't know if you're looking for like business wisdom, ways to operate. One thing I always encourage people is to not be afraid to move the boat. That's a fishing analogy there. But when you're fishing, oftentimes you can do better instead of just trying every bait in the spot that you're in. Maybe you've got 50 different types of bait in your tackle box. Yeah, you could stand there every day, all day, and try all the bait, but the fish just aren't there. They're not biting. You'd be better to move the boat. And it always feels like a big task to move the boat. It feels like, oh, we got to pull up the anchor. We got to put the chips down. We got to get the kids to, untangle their poles. But the reality is it just takes a second or two to like, all you got to do is say, hey, we're moving the boat, and the kids kind of sit themselves down. The chips fall out of your hand. Your buddy pulls the anchor and you're moving. And so, you've heard that in my story a couple of times with like Qzzr. Hey, let's build a quiz tool for teachers and trainers. And then publishers start showing us okay, let's go there, right? Yeah. And with Volley, it does seem that we've been on the hunt for product market fit. And that's because we've been on, and we've pivoted a couple of times just because I know it's going to be easier to move the boat. It's going to be easier. Even though it feels as a company just like hard to move focus, it's going to be easier than just continuing to beat our head on this problem that doesn't seem to work.
Prevents that founder's disease.
Right.
You heard of that? Like we get people that come, they have an idea and they're so fixated on it. And they just know it's the answer. And then we start developing and doing research and come up with ideas that maybe change it slightly and stuff like that. And, a lot of times there'll be that entrepreneur that just has a hard time accepting that. And it's like, no, it has to be this way. It has to be this way. But, it turns out they maybe haven't talked to enough users and don't know that it has to be that way. Or they get it to market and learn, oh, well, no one wants it that way.
Right.
Right. So that's, it's definitely,
everyone thinks they're Steve Jobs, right? Just like they know what the future is, what's happening. Yeah. Right.
And even with it's like with software, it's, obviously you can tweak things and change this part of it and upload it, and then the new version's out and everybody gets it versus like a hard good, like you sell the hard good and you get the hard good and you can't really change it once it's in their hands. But I do think it's important to still have that mindset where you sell V1 of it and then, you got, a few thousand people in their hands, they're going to give you feedback. I think it's very important to tweak it between runs and as much as you can because that's how you're going to make it better and go to V1.2 and 3 and 4 and then do a V2 that's way amplified and stuff like that and figure out, all those problems. So I think, it's incredibly important in business. It's hard to do though,
Hard to do.
Mindset wise. Like I think, and to do all the tweaks and all the moving parts and everything. But the people that do tweak like that and make things better, usually I see their businesses and their customer satisfaction and stuff getting better and better because of it.
Yep. And I think it just feels hard to do. And that's the point. And that's why I use the don't be afraid to move the boat analogy. It's just, it isn't actually that hard to do. And you'll be kind of amazed once you just speak it into existence, like, hey, we're going here. Everyone just kind of pivots with you. And then everyone starts leaning this direction. You're like, whoa, okay, now we have momentum that direction. And dude, what if we spent another month beating our head on the wall of this, where we were, it just, in hindsight, but before you make the call, it feels like a lot of friction. It feels like a lot of changes and, oh man, I have to get everyone involved. And it's actually only a couple of meetings and change the headline in your website and, tell a couple customers and you're good.
Those are some good field notes.
Thanks.
From a multi-founder. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. This is great.
Dude.
Yeah, I think this will be a great episode. It's interesting hearing stories from multi-founders like yourself that go from one project to another versus a founder that maybe has done one project their whole career, or in the middle of one project that they've been working on this whole time. Is always valuable, and how one thing leads to the next.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth.
Man, I'm way more humble than I would have been, in my Maestro days. Like, oh yeah, I got it. I got the world figured out, man. Look at me. And now, I've had my teeth kicked in here and there, and it's like, it's not exactly as easy as it looks.
No. Yeah. Well, great. Well, thanks, man.
You bet. Thank you so much for having me.
There we go. Josh Little. Multi-founder, current project Volley, which is worth checking out. I even have a profile in there where you can purchase time with me to talk about your products. very, very exciting when I get a request through on his platform to have a conversation about what products they're building and how I can help. But it's just awesome to learn from someone that's a small town educator that has founded multiple companies, all tied back to, like I said at the beginning, education and connection with people in a smarter way. I like his drive towards creating this type of quicker connection with Volley and so on and so forth. Some massive takeaways from Josh, one of which I agree with because this is what I did when I built my first company, Klug, is start with a service company. I agree with that. One, it's like instant revenue. You connect directly with your customers. It's very helpful because you could also get a lot of recurring business from providing that service. It's an ongoing service. Great way to build up referrals and stuff like that. So it's an easy business to tap into, generate revenue quickly, and then, start to grow, in an efficient manner, versus going right into a product business, which takes more upfront capital. It's definitely higher risk. It takes more time to get to market. Versus, a service business, I was able to start mine by plugging a computer in and picking up the phone and just start dialing and finding new customers. So totally agree with that, especially if you're looking to dip your feet into entrepreneurship, service industry, service business, especially if it's like a B2B type service. Great way to start. When building a business, a product, an idea, thinking through it, I like his approach, which is, common for people building businesses, looking and, doing research and digging in and getting an understanding of the need of a market or a niche or whatever. And not just building for the now, but also thinking ahead to what will be needed in the future. So you've got to be able to project yourself and be a few steps ahead, which is difficult to do. But if you're thinking about a current idea or a product or, a problem you're solving, if you are thinking about just the now, it is a good idea to be as, thinking ahead so you could build that product as future proof as possible as you're building. So definitely a great way to look at what you're building in the process is to think ahead, look towards the future as much as you can, and try to get as best of an understanding as what's to come so you can fine tune that product and be ahead of the curve. The other thing, of course, is do what you say and build trust. It's very important in business, especially with things moving fast and so on and so forth. When you're building is, staying true to your word is important, and I've seen that where as soon as someone says they're going to do something and then they don't do something, it changes the perspective that you might have on that person. And I mean, sometimes obviously people get busy, things you have to pivot and things change and whatnot, but it's better in that scenario to be honest and upfront about why things changed and why you went a different direction or were not able to deliver versus, just not even showing up at all. So definitely agree with that. Another great point, which I totally agree with, and I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs find more success by doing this, but don't be afraid to move the boat. As Josh put it, pivoting is good, especially if you see something that's not working early. As soon as you see or get a taste of something not working, then focus on pivoting. How are you going to pivot? What can you change? Or, maybe you're going one direction and then you see an opportunity that's much larger, that quick pivots and resource shifts can solve that problem. That is a way bigger opportunity. Keeping your mind open to pivoting early on and throughout the development process and the building process and the growing process, I think is super important and can prevent you from getting stuck in a place that you'll look back and realize you should have been out of that place a long time ago and you wasted a bunch of time being stuck in that rut. So being open and pivoting is just crucial and very important. So yeah, that's it. Josh Little, great chat. I really appreciate the time with them. It's always good chatting with these entrepreneurs and it's like reconnecting with them at a deeper level. And I like how even after I've been having these conversations, the relationship continues to get deeper afterwards where, we're connecting more consistently and talking about new ideas or continuing the conversation of the subject matter that happens in these discussions, in these podcast episodes. So I'm really enjoying doing this, and I really appreciate having guests like Josh Little. So thanks for listening and watching. And then also, please reach out to us. We'd love to help you with your entrepreneurial journey. We focus on consumer products and building those products in the hardware space. So if you're building something or know someone that's building something, reach out to us. We'd love to help. We really can help you with the design, engineering, prototyping, sourcing a proper manufacturing supplier, helping you manage your manufacturing at scale, and helping you get it wherever you need it to go to distribute to your customers. We work with a lot of entrepreneurs, but also we work with a lot of, bigger, successful businesses, and feel free to reach out. We'd love to help you out. Check us out on our website and all the social media platforms as Klugonics. Thanks for listening. See you next week.